So we're recording. Kim, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Shawn. So today I have a series of questions specifically surrounding the idea of fulfillment.
Yeah.
And so here we go. Just starting in, just first of all, I am seeking this hard because I feel drawn to find out if it's true. I'm reading Christianity's Great Dilemma.
Oh, good.
Through a lot of the scriptures and listening to a lot of your verse by verse teachings, and my time is limited, and so my questions are not a reflection of me not digging in and wanting you to give me easy answers, but I don't have enough time to learn as quickly as I would like to, and so I'm hoping for a few quicker answers or maybe some references that would help me get some of these answers sooner. So
all right,
I'm willing to share.
Love to.
All right, Matthew 24:33.
Yeah.
So it talks about that when you see all these things, everything with all the discourse and everything, that you know it's near, right at the door, and this generation will pass until all these things have happened. It seems so clear there, especially with the prior chapter. It's saying all this will come on this generation. But then a couple verses later, it says, but about that day or hour, no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So it almost could be read, thinking devil's advocate, the biblical fulfillment isn't a true principle. Christ wouldn't have even known. There's a couple verses later that he wouldn't have even known. So how could he give that timeline?
Right. So what it is when the four disciples come to him on the Mount of Olives and they say, tell us when these things will be and all that, he gives them the general signs to be looking for. And he says, and let me tell you, a generation won't pass before all these things happen. 40 years would be the estimated time of a generation at that point in time. But of the actual day and the actual hour, he says, no man knows, but my Father only.
Got it.
Yeah. That's what he said.
So he knew kind of the season, but not the exact, December 1st.
Right.
Gotcha.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And then, so 2 Peter 3, right now I'm working my way through the apostolic record. I started it a couple years ago. I think I shared with you, just trying to strip any previous lens that I had for reading scripture. And so I'm going chronologically through. So I had just finished 2 Peter, and this is the day of the Lord, right? So this is a big one. I listened to your verse by verse on 2 Peter 3:8, and I think I grasped, and I also read that part in Pastor Hill's book, but that the 1,000 days is 1,000 years is 1 day, 1,000 years.
Yeah.
The essential concept is that God's timing is not our timing. He doesn't look at time the same way, not a literal 1,000 days. That was 1,000 years is 1 day.
Right.
Okay. So I get that. It's interesting, and I don't know if you did pursue a verse by verse of the rest of the chapter, but it's not on your website, because there's a few verses that come up in 11 and 13, and I was like, I wonder what his take is on that. So I'm just going to ask you. It talks about, in verse 11, everything will be destroyed. Basically, heavens are melting. There's a new heaven and a new earth. And I don't know enough about the secular side of the destruction in 70 AD, so maybe you can give me Cliff Notes version, but it just doesn't seem like these are really dramatic pictures that he's giving here. And it seems like something that only God himself could rain fire. Maybe that's my bias, imagining the day of the Lord the way I always have. But I don't know. Is that what he's talking about? You know, in your view, the 70 AD destruction of Jerusalem with the heavens melting, or is that something else?
Well, I think the better way to kind of explain it, Kim, is the Jews, like back in Isaiah and Ezekiel, I think they would, the Old Testament, talking about destruction that was occurring to them then in certain places, they will say the same thing. And the heavens and the stars fall from the sky, and the heavens melt, and the firmament is gone. All they're doing is using their hyperbolic language to describe what it looks like for them when destruction comes. And so, if you read Peter, 2 Peter 3, and you know that the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements melt, and the earth and all of its work are burned up, and you take that literally, you make a mistake, because they describe the same thing in the Old Testament in the very same language, but it doesn't mean a literal sense. It's symbolic of the former melting away and the new heaven and the new earth replacing it.
So what is that, the new heaven and the new earth?
Oh, it's a good.
Because as I've started to try to explain the great news, like as my understanding, that's one of the questions that comes up from my Christian friends, like, well, where's the new heaven and new earth then? We're still living here, right?
So the Jews saw two ages, the age that they were in and then the age to come. The age that they were in was under a former heaven that God describes as creating, not the material world, but that he created the nation of Israel under an old heaven, under a law, under his covenants and everything that he would do with them. But they also describe another age that would come. And that was the one the apostles are always telling Jesus, when's your kingdom coming? And when are we going to do this? And when's this? And they were talking about that new administration. So the best way to see this is like you would Washington, D.C. and the government. Under Clinton, we were under one administration. That's the former heaven and earth. And then when Reagan came in, we entered into a new administration. That would be the new heaven and the new earth. And that is when everything of the former age melts away, the law, the temple, genealogies, prophets. And in the new heaven and the new earth is when God writes his laws on your heart and mind, and you walk by the Spirit. And that's what is being described here, if you will.
Okay. And so along with that, like in Revelation 21, at the beginning, he saw a new heaven, new earth. The first earth had passed away, no longer any sea. All of that, is that referring kind of to that same, or is this more of like when we die, like the heavenly kingdom after this life? Or is it?
I believe, because I believe in fulfillment, that what John is describing is what occurred once Jesus returned and took his bride to kind of man or equip the New Jerusalem above with those saints. And now, John, when I saw a new heaven and a new earth, it's the new economy that began after Jerusalem was destroyed and the new Jerusalem was put in. And like when it says there is no more sea, people take that literally, but the sea for them was the molten sea. That was outside.
It was what?
It was, they called it the molten sea. It was like the big laver was outside the temple that the Jews would come and wash themselves in. Yeah, so all of that, you really have to know Judaism to be able to write Revelation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I've heard you mention that Christ's victory was complete, entire everything, including hell, being no more. So I'm just wondering if you have some scripture scripture verses for that, or is it more of a like his victory was total? I believe it was total, which would include hell. Because I mean, in my weakness, I will see things going on in the world and the wickedness and like the pure evil, and I'm just like, sometimes it seems like some people should go to hell, but I know that that is not a loving thing, and that's not agape love. But I don't know where this is. There scriptural backup that there is no. Maybe you're just talking about eternal hell, but there will be that time of reckoning. I don't know.
No. So in Revelation chapter 20, and remember, this is before we read 21. So in Revelation chapter 20, we're reading about what happens when Yeshua returns, takes his bride. And it says at verse 13 that the sea gives up its dead. And it says, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them. And every man was judged according to his works. This was those people who were under the law, those people who didn't receive Christ, who had gone to Sheol, that prison part. And so what John is discussing is when all of that's given up, and then it says in the next verse that death and hell were then cast into the lake of fire. And that is the second death. So that was fulfilled in and through the nation being subject to all of that. And that takes us right into Revelation 21 when John says, and then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. So that's why Revelation 20:14 is where death and hell were cast into the lake of fire, and that was the second death. I take it fulfilled. Now, in terms of evil on this world, absolutely. The dark is always in opposition to the light. And what exists outside of the New Jerusalem above, where that seems to be the realm of dark, where those who will not have faith abide. It's not the covered place the Jews went to before Christ propitiated the law on their behalf, but it's not a burning place, but it's definitely not in the presence of God. And but I do believe that's where they want to be. That's where they relish to be, and they love the dark more than the light. It's just that the literal burning hell has been done away with.
Yeah, for sure. Just 1 minute.
No problem.
Okay. And then, John 21:23. Maybe this was a weird one. So my impression my entire life was that John the Beloved is still alive. And that comes from here, right? That if I wanted to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? And somehow this entire doctrine, and I don't know if that's specific to just the LDS believing that, or if there are other Christians that believe that, because I could see that being an argument for when Christ said, some of you will be alive, even though he said some, not one of you, but anyway, some of you will be alive when I return. And the justification in my mind for that was always like, oh yeah, we're John the Beloved.
Got it.
So can you talk a little bit about, I guess, that, and if other people believe that, and I guess where that came from?
Yeah, this is strictly LDS. I don't know any Christian.
Is that?
Yeah. But you can see how it could come about because of what Jesus says to Peter. You know what?
Sure.
Yeah, see it. But doesn't John say, that?
Yeah, that was a rumor.
Yeah, it's just a rumor. But here's the interesting thing about that, Kim, is that if they're standing there and Yeshua says, what if I say that he doesn't die, but he'll stay till I come? What does that mean to you, Peter? Doesn't that suggest to you that he's putting his return in their day and time, and it would be reasonable that if John was still alive? Yeah, I think it really shows that he's telling them, even if he's here by the time I come back, that it would be reasonable to them that John could have actually been alive when that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that make sense?
For sure. I just think it's so interesting. Yeah, it does. I think it's interesting. My whole life I just believed, oh yeah, he's like this immortal being walking around until Jesus comes back,
Yeah.
So I just wasn't sure if others believe that too.
I used to believe that too. It's kind of
yeah. In fact, I performed in, have you seen the Savior of the World production in Salt Lake?
No.
No, okay. It's like a reenactment of the life of Christ, and I had, friends that played on the Beloved, and I'm like, this is the only role that, maybe your character will actually come and watch one of the performances. And I thought that was such a cool thought, and anyway, interesting. Okay, so am I okay on time? I hope just a couple more.
You're fine.
Okay, I was going to say, I could call back another time. I don't want to
I'm going to interject before you go to your next comment. This is so wonderful that there is a seeker. You've got the questions. You're looking. I cannot be so more happy in my heart to be able to talk to somebody and I'm not just blowing smoke. I really mean this. So let's keep going.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I appreciate you opening up this time for not very many people, I think, would do this. You are so solid in all of your research and your study and your belief that you can stand and be like, I'll take whatever questions. I think that's a lot. So thank you. Okay, so First John timeline. I listened to a teaching recently, and they were placing the writing of First John in AD 90 AD, and I was just like, well, that doesn't add up, because he talks quite a bit about the coming 70 AD destruction, right? Do you have any thoughts on the timeline of when First John was written specifically?
A timeline on First John or second or third, not specifically, but I can give you some general statements. One, the dating of the books in the apostolic record is extremely suspect in almost every way. Even from our best scholars, Bart Ehrman and the others, the dating is just really, what do you want to believe? But I believe that Revelation, even though they say that First John, the epistles, were probably written after, I'm not sure I buy that, just because it's. And the other thing is, it's possible if John was allowed to tarry and John wasn't taken at the 70 AD destruction, but the eternal evidence for Revelation having been written way before 70 AD and not in 90 like the Christians suggest is really substantial. And I can send you a book you could check out that really shows you the internal evidence of Revelation. Almost certainly proves that it was written well before 70 AD.
Oh, that'd be awesome, because right now I'm in, like I said, actually I'm all the way to Second Peter, wherever I am. No, I'm in First John still in my chronological reading. So I'm coming up on Revelation, so that would be helpful. I'll take all the resources. I know you have some on your website as well that I'm going to check out.
So before we hang up, I'll turn off the recording, and you can give me a mailing address, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, perfect. That would be awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I just have two more. Witnesses. So, it says that one will be in the field and will disappear, and one will be on the rooftop. And you would just think that there would be, and maybe there is, just an overwhelming record of missing persons around 70 AD, because not every family would be taken together, I would assume. And so they'd be like, is there some sort of secular history where they're like, all these people just disappeared? I'm thinking Thanos snaps his fingers and half the universe, disappears. And there were a lot of witnesses for that. But I don't know. Maybe I'm reading that wrong.
No, you're not. Okay. First of all, when Jesus, the parable where one will be grinding and one will be taken and one in the field, that could be speaking of the Roman invasion of people being killed randomly as that rapture. The thing is from the time Christ ascended to 70 AD, the Christians were increasingly disappearing because they were being killed and martyred. And as it got closer to 70, they were getting wiped out. So I personally believe that the body of believers was very small, and they were hiding in meetings in secret places so that they could survive. And when they disappeared and were taken, I don't believe it would be like if you and your husband and kids would disappeared from the neighborhood. I think it was a very different, small bride. Paul said, we can barely even hold on right now. The Antichrist and all this stuff is already here. So I don't see it as. And then the third thing is, in modern futurism, dispensationalism, and books, they all describe the world and what it will look like when Christ returns in our future and takes us. And they always explain it this way. And everybody won't even really care because we were never really part of their communities. And they'll just say, oh, they went off into the desert and to be with Jesus in a commune. So let's just take their property. Yeah. That's the logic that is used today in the future of what would happen. When you look back at Jerusalem and that small surviving true bride who was pure, holy, and without spot, I think she was absolutely taken without a blink of an eye. The final thing, Kim, is that there is a myth, a legend, that all the Christians escaped Jerusalem and went to a place called Pella. But that is just a tradition, and it's not supported by any kind of text. That makes sense?
Okay, yeah, that does. No. Okay, and so my last one is regarding the parable of the sheep and the goats, which is one of my very favorite. And Matthew 25. Yeah. And just because I feel like that, along with Christ telling us that people will know his followers by the way that they love, not by their denomination, not by their doctrine, not by theology or works or anything like that. How does he love other people? And this is, support of that. And I'm just wondering if that parable he gave was like a literal thing that happened when he came and he examined his bride, and some of them he took and some of them were not as loving, or is this something that's going to happen in the future, or was it just something to emphasize the importance of that love one another teaching?
Yeah, I think the latter, and I think that it was very depictive of because like in Revelation 2 and 3, Yeshua comes and he tells the different churches, hey, you're good at this, but you're not good at that. And you better change or I'm going to take you. And so it was incumbent upon them for them to be profitable servants and to be loving and kind and do those things and not be like the goats. And we see that in his other parables in Matthew, like when he does the casting the net into the sea, and there's fish, good fish and bad fish, and you keep the good and you throw out the bad. All of it was predicated on those who were really true, loving, walking by faith, suffering, and waiting for him to come. So I think you've interpreted it rightly.
Yeah. Because, where it starts when the Son of Man comes in his glory, I was like, okay, so if that was in 70 AD, was that him evaluating them? How he's going to evaluate us as well, because it's an eternal principle, So that.
Well, the difference is that he does say, depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. And that goats would do, but that was only specific to them who were and the everlasting fire was called that because it's God's fire. He's everlasting. It's his fire. And that place was prepared for devils and angels, not man. So those who were before he returned, did go to that covered place, and they did go to that burning place, prepared for the devil and his angels, because they didn't do what he told them to do.
Yeah. Yeah, my translation says eternal punishment. And so that's, I guess, but that was prior to, as you're saying in Revelation 20, that place was cast in the fire.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's all I have for you today.
Oh, that was awesome. Hey, I mean, that was a lot. Hey, keep doing it. Make your questions and list, and we can talk any Thursday, because we're recording these and people can listen, and they're going to benefit by your searching, and that's what we need. Yeah,
for sure. Well, and I appreciate you, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks, Kim. Say hi to who you love. Talk to you later.
Yes, I will for sure.
Wait, don't hang up, because I want to get your address.
Yes, I will stay on. Yes, for sure.